The Montana bunker creaked under the weight of another distant explosion. Commander Elena Martinez looked up from her tactical display and rubbed her tired eyes. 3 years of fighting the Viridians had aged her 20. Her dark hair now showed. Streaks of gray and lines marked her face where smiles used to be. "Another attack on the eastern perimeter," said Communications Officer Alan Parker. His voice was flat, emotionless. After years of bad news, emotions were a luxury few could afford. "Casualties?" Elena asked, not wanting to hear the answer. 4 dead. 6 wounded. Medical bay is at capacity." Elena nodded silently. Every day brought more losses. The bunker, once home to 500 resistance fighters, now housed barely 300. The Viridians were winning this war of attrition. Their tall, 6-limbed forms and advanced shield technology made them nearly impossible to kill. Their weapons cut through Earth's best armor like paper. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," Alan said suddenly, his voice rising with surprise. It's on our old military frequencies. They're encrypted with codes we haven't used in years." Elena frowned. "Could be a Viridian trap. They've been known to use our own systems against us." The message repeats every 30 seconds. Just coordinates in 3 words. "Reinforcements incoming." It's using authentication protocols from before the invasion. A spark of hope flickered in Elena's chest, but she quickly suppressed it. Hope was dangerous. Hope made you take risks. Still, they couldn't ignore a potential ally. "Where are the coordinates pointing to?" she asked. Alan checked his screen. "Rocky Mountains, about 50 miles west of here, remote area." Elena made her decision. "Get Lieutenant Carter in here. I need a recon team ready in 30 minutes. William Carter arrived quickly. He was young for a lieutenant, only 26, but the war had made everyone grow up fast. His blonde hair was cut military short, and his blue eyes carried the same haunted look as everyone else's. "You called for me, Commander?" Elena briefed him on the message. "Take a small team, 4 people maximum. Stay in radio contact. If anything feels wrong, you get out immediately." "Yes, ma'am," Carter said. "Who should I take?" "Your choice. People you trust." 2 hours later, Carter and 3 soldiers, Sergeant Frank Miller, Private Diane Lee, and Private George Alvarez, were moving through the pine forests of the Rocky Mountains. They wore adaptive camouflage suits that blended with their surroundings and carried energy rifles. Nearly useless against Viridian shields, but better than nothing. 2 miles to the coordinates, Miller whispered, checking his navigation device. They moved slowly, carefully. Viridian patrols were rare in these mountains, but not unknown. Every sound made them freeze, a bird taking flight, a branch snapping under their boots. Lee suddenly held up her hand. "Movement ahead." They crouched behind a fallen tree, weapons ready. Carter used his binoculars to scan the area. "I see it," he said. "Some kind of ship, not Viridian design." Through his binoculars, Carter observed a sleek craft about the size of a small transport plane. It was matte black with no visible windows. Most strikingly, it bore the insignia of Earth's United Military Forces, a symbol not seen in public since the early days of the invasion. "Could be a trap," Miller said. "Viridians have copied our ships before." "Let's wait and watch," Carter decided. They didn't wait long. A section of the ship's hull slid open, revealing a ramp. Figures emerged, human figures in unfamiliar combat, suits that seemed to shimmer slightly in the sunlight. Their helmets covered their entire faces with dark visors. They moved with precision and confidence, securing the area around their ship. There were about 20 of them. They carried weapons unlike anything Carter had seen before, compact rifles with glowing blue power cells. "Those aren't Viridians," Alvarez whispered. One of the figures removed their helmet. It was a woman with short brown hair and a stern face. She looked around, then spoke to a device on her wrist. Her voice carried clearly to their hiding spot. "Secure landing achieved. Temporal coordinates match target. Beginning scan for local forces." Carter felt a chill run down his spine. Temporal coordinates? What did that mean? His radio crackled. "Lieutenant Carter, this is HQ. Do you copy?" It was Commander Martinez. "I copy." He whispered into his radio. "We've found something unexpected. Describe it." As Carter began to respond, one of the strange soldiers pointed directly at their hiding spot. "We've got company," the soldier shouted. Carter made a split-second decision. "Hold fire," he called out, standing slowly with his hands raised. "We're human resistance." The soldiers aimed their weapons but didn't fire. The woman who had removed her helmet approached, her own weapon lowered. "I'm Colonel Samantha Wright, Earth Defense Force," she said. "We're here to help." Carter's team were escorted to the ship where Colonel Wright explained who they were, or rather when they were from. 300 years in the future, humans had developed technology to travel through time. They had sent back their best, soldiers armed with weapons designed specifically to fight Viridians, to change the course of the war. "In our history," Wright explained, "this war lasted for decades. Billions died. Earth was nearly destroyed before we finally won. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen." Carter struggled to believe it. "Time travel? That's impossible." Wright smiled grimly. "So was interstellar travel, until the Viridians showed up. She showed them inside the ship. Future technology was everywhere. Holographic displays, weapons that could penetrate Viridian shields, medical equipment that could heal wounds in minutes." "Take us to your commander," Wright said. "We don't have much time. The Viridians are planning something big. Something that didn't happen in our timeline. Our arrival has already changed things." When they returned to the bunker, Commander Martinez was skeptical at first. She questioned Wright extensively, looking for inconsistencies in her story. "If you're really from the future," Martinez asked, "why come back now? Why not earlier, before the invasion started?" "The technology has limitations," Wright explained. "We could only go back this far, and our historians identified this moment as the turning point, the moment when humanity nearly gave up. We're here to make sure you don't." As they talked, alarms suddenly blared throughout the bunker. Alan Parker rushed in, face pale. "Massive Viridian force detected," he reported. "At least 50 ships. They're heading straight for us." Martinez looked at Wright. "Is this the something big you mentioned?" Wright nodded grimly. "In our history, this bunker fell today. It was one of the last major resistance strongholds in North America." "And now?" Martinez asked. Wright stood tall, determination in her eyes. "Now we change history." The bunker shook violently as the first Viridian bombs hit the surface above. Dust fell from the ceiling and lights flickered. "Everyone to battle stations," Commander Martinez ordered through the base-wide communication system. Her voice was calm despite the chaos. The future soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. Colonel Wright barked orders to her team, who quickly unpacked crates from their ship. Inside were sleek weapons with glowing blue power cells. "These rifles can cut through Viridian shields," Wright explained, handing one to Martinez. "We call them pulse rifles. They fire concentrated bursts of energy at frequencies that disrupt their shield technology." Lieutenant Carter watched as the future soldiers distributed their weapons to the bunker's defenders. One of them, a tall woman with dark skin and intense eyes, approached him. "Major Alexis Rivera," she said, offering her hand. "I'll be working with your squad on the north entrance." Carter nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. "That's the weakest point in our defenses. The Viridians always hit it hardest." "I know," Rivera replied with a grim smile. "In our history, that's where they broke through first." The bunker's senior staff gathered quickly for a final briefing. Stephen Jackson, the civilian representative on the War Council, looked skeptical as he eyed the future soldiers. "How do we know we can trust them?" he whispered to Martinez. "This could all be an elaborate Viridian trick." "We don't have time for doubts," Martinez replied firmly. "The Viridians are here now. If these people wanted to harm us, they could have done it already." Colonel Wright activated a holographic display showing the area around the bunker. Tiny red dots represented Viridian forces approaching from all directions. "They've surrounded the entire complex," Wright said. "Their goal is to wipe out this resistance cell completely, but we have something they don't expect: knowledge of exactly how they'll attack." She pointed to specific locations on the map. They'll focus their main force here, at the north entrance. Meanwhile, smaller teams will try to breach through these ventilation shafts on the east side. They know your weapons can't hurt them, so they'll be overconfident. Martinez studied the map. How do you know their exact plan? Because in our history, this attack was studied for centuries. Right, explained. It became a textbook example of Viridian battle tactics. We know every move they'll make before they make it. The plan was simple, but bold. Instead of spreading their forces thin to defend every entrance, they would concentrate at the points. The Viridians considered secondary. The future soldiers would lead the counterattack once the aliens committed to their main assault. As the defenders moved to their positions, Carter found himself standing next to Major Rivera. She was checking her weapon with practiced ease. "Have you fought many Viridians?" he asked. "Only in simulations," she admitted. "The war ended 2 centuries before I was born. But we've trained our entire lives for this mission. Every possible scenario, every Viridian tactic, we've studied it all." The first explosion rocked the north entrance. The massive metal door bent inward from the force of the blast. Outside, they could hear the high-pitched whine of Viridian energy weapons. "Here they come," Rivera said, raising her rifle. "Remember, aim for the joint between their upper and middle arms. That's where their shield generators are weakest." The door blew open with a deafening crash. Smoke filled the corridor as tall, 6-limbed figures moved forward. Their bluish skin seemed to shimmer with energy shields. Their 4 eyes glowed in the darkness as they scanned for targets. The first wave of Viridians entered the corridor, firing their weapons with deadly precision. Energy bolts struck the walls, leaving scorched holes in the concrete. "Now!" Rivera shouted. The future soldiers fired as one. Their blue energy pulses cut through the Viridian shields like they weren't even there. The aliens fell, their bodies twitching as the energy disrupted their nervous systems. More Viridians poured through the breach, but they were met with the same deadly response. For the first time in years, humans had weapons that could hurt them. The aliens hesitated, confused by this unexpected development. "They're pulling back from the north entrance," came a voice over the radio. It was Commander Martinez. "Just as you predicted, Colonel. They're redirecting to the east ventilation shafts." "Perfect," Wright responded. "Spring the trap." Carter followed Rivera and a mixed team of present and future soldiers as they rushed through the bunker's corridors toward the east side. They arrived just as the Viridians were cutting through the metal grates that protected the ventilation system. "Wait until they're halfway through," Rivera instructed. "Then hit them all at once." The Viridians breached the shaft and began to pour in, their bodies contorting to fit through the narrow space. They were vulnerable, their shields weakened by the tight confines. "Now!" Rivera shouted. The combined human force opened fire. The narrow ventilation shaft became a killing zone. Viridian bodies piled up, blocking those behind them. Their alien screams echoed through the metal corridors. Similar reports came in from around the bunker. At every point where the Viridians attacked, they met unexpected resistance. Their carefully planned assault was falling apart. 3 hours later, the battle was over. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had scored a decisive victory against the Viridians. The alien forces had retreated, leaving their dead behind. In the command center, a cheer went up as Martinez entered. The commander allowed herself a small smile, the first genuine one Carter had seen in months. "This is just the beginning," Wright said, standing beside Martinez. "Now comes the hard part. We need to share our knowledge and technology with all remaining human forces." Stephen Jackson stepped forward. "I still have questions. If you change history, won't that affect your own future? Isn't there some kind of paradox?" Wright nodded solemnly. "Yes. By coming here, we've already changed the timeline. The future we came from no longer exists. But we made that sacrifice willingly. Billions died in our history. Cities were destroyed. Earth took centuries to recover. If we can prevent that, it's worth any personal cost." Martinez addressed the room. "Tomorrow, we begin a new phase of this war. Colonel Wright and her soldiers will train our forces in Viridian combat tactics. Dr. Green, our lead scientist, will work with their team to understand and reproduce their weapons technology. She looked at Carter. Lieutenant, you'll work directly with Major Rivera. Form a special unit mixing our soldiers with theirs. I want you to be ready for field operations within 2 weeks. As the meeting ended, Carter approached Rivera. So what's it like? Coming to the past, knowing you can never go back? Rivera's expression was complicated, a mixture of sadness and determination. Strange. Everyone I've ever known is gone, or rather will never exist now. But when I see what we've accomplished today, she gestured to the celebrating soldiers around them. This makes it worthwhile. Outside the bunker, dawn was breaking over the mountains. For the first time in years, humans had reason to hope. The tide was beginning to turn. 2 weeks passed quickly in the Montana bunker. The large training room, once used for civilian gatherings, now echoed with the sounds of combat practice. Lieutenant Carter watched as Major Rivera demonstrated a takedown move on Sergeant Miller. Despite Miller's size advantage, he found himself flat on his back in seconds. The Viridians rely too much on their upper limbs, Rivera explained to the gathered soldiers. Their lower body is vulnerable. Aim low, move fast, and you can bring them down even without our advanced weapons. Carter had spent every day working closely with Rivera. His special unit, nicknamed Chimera Squad, consisted of 5 present-day soldiers and 5 from the future. They trained together, ate together, and slowly built trust. Again, Rivera ordered. The soldiers paired off, practicing the moves she had shown them. Carter approached Rivera as she watched the training session. They're learning fast, he said. She nodded. They have to. We've changed the timeline already. The Viridians will adapt their tactics now that they know we can hurt them. In another part of the bunker, Dr. Olivia Green worked with the future science officer, Dr. Kyle Bennett. Her makeshift lab was filled with dismantled future technology, holographic displays, and complex equations written on every available surface. This is amazing, Green said, examining a pulse rifle's power cell under a microscope. The energy density is at least 100 times greater than anything we've developed. It took decades to perfect, Bennett replied. He was younger than most of the future soldiers with kind eyes behind smart glasses. After the war, humanity devoted enormous resources to understanding Viridian technology. Green looked up from her work. Can we reproduce these weapons with our current technology? Not exactly, Bennett admitted. But we brought manufacturing, equipment. We can create simpler versions that will still be effective. Commander Martinez and Colonel Wright spent their days in the command center, reaching out to other resistance cells around the world. Using secure communication channels, they shared information about the future soldiers and their technology. Australia reports successful implementation of our shield disruption frequencies, Martinez said, reading from a report. Resistance forces in Europe are requesting additional technical specifications. Send them everything, Wright replied. The more widely this knowledge spreads, the better our chances. Stephen Jackson entered the command center, his face tense. Commander, a word in private? Martinez led him to a small side room. What is it, Jackson? I've been talking to some of the other civilian representatives. They're concerned about these future soldiers having too much influence. Some are suggesting we should keep some of their technology for ourselves, give our cell an advantage. Martinez's expression hardened. These people came here to save all of humanity, not just us. We share everything with every resistance cell, is that clear? Jackson nodded reluctantly. Yes, Commander, but people are nervous. Changing history, time travel, it's a lot to take in. That evening, Carter found Rivera alone in the mess hall, studying maps of the western United States. Mind if I join you? He asked. She gestured to the empty seat across from her. I was just looking at Seattle. In our history, the Viridians established their main command center for North America there. Carter studied the map. We lost Seattle early in the war. Haven't had any reconnaissance from there in over a year. We need to know if they're using it as a command center in this timeline too, Rivera said. If they are, it could be our next target. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm blaring through the bunker. They rushed to the command center, where Martinez was reviewing urgent reports. Viridian forces are on the move, she announced to the gathered officers. Multiple sightings across the region. They're searching for something. Us, Wright said grimly. They're looking for us. They know something has changed. Over the next few days, Viridian patrols increased. The bunker went into lockdown with only essential missions permitted. Despite these precautions, information about the future soldiers began to spread among resistance cells worldwide. Not all the reactions were positive. Some cells, isolated and paranoid after years of fighting, viewed the future humans with suspicion. Rumors spread that they were actually Viridian experiments or that they would bring an even worse future. We need to address these concerns, Martinez told Wright during a late-night strategy session. Perhaps a joint broadcast to all resistance cells? Before Wright could respond, Alan Parker burst into the room. Commander, we've intercepted Viridian communications. They're converging on Seattle. Something big is happening there. This confirms it, Wright said. Seattle is their command center in this timeline too. And I think I know what's happening. In our history, this is when their supreme commander arrived to oversee the final phase of the invasion. The news spread quickly through the bunker. If the Viridian supreme commander was indeed in Seattle, it presented both an opportunity and a risk. We need to strike, Carter argued during the War Council meeting. Cut off the head of the snake. It could be a trap, Jackson countered. They might be expecting us to attack. Rivera studied the intercepted Viridian communication patterns. Their security protocols are heightened, but not at the levels we'd expect for a trap. I think they're genuinely bringing in their leadership, and they don't believe we can touch them there. Martinez made her decision. We'll launch Operation Daybreak. A strike force will infiltrate Seattle and gather intelligence on the command center. If the Supreme Commander is there, we'll evaluate options for a larger assault. The next week was a flurry of preparation. Carter and Rivera trained their Chimera squad for urban infiltration. Dr. Green and Dr. Bennett developed specialized equipment for detecting Viridian security systems. Supply teams gathered weapons, food, and medical supplies for the mission. The night before departure, Carter couldn't sleep. He found Rivera on the bunker's observation deck, a small platform that offered a rare view of the night sky through armored glass panels. Nervous about tomorrow? He asked, joining her at the railing. Always before a mission, she admitted. But this one feels different. In our timeline, humans never managed to strike directly at their command structure until much later in the war. We're changing history in ways we can't predict. Carter looked at the stars above. Is that a bad thing? Your future sounded pretty grim. It was, Rivera said softly. Earth recovered eventually, but the cost was unimaginable. That's why we came back. To create a better future, even if it means we can never return to our own time. You gave up everything, Carter realized. We made our choice, Rivera replied, turning to face him. Now we live with it. One day at a time. The next morning, as dawn broke over the mountains, the strike team assembled in the hangar. 20 soldiers, a mix of present and future, checked their equipment one last time. Their transport, a modified future vehicle with stealth capabilities, hummed quietly as its engines warmed up. Commander Martinez addressed the team. This mission could change the course of the war. Get in, gather intelligence, and get out. No unnecessary risks. As Carter boarded the transport, he caught Rivera's eye. She gave him a confident nod. For a better future, she said. For all of us, he replied. The stealth transport flew low over the devastated landscape that had once been eastern Washington state. Lieutenant Carter looked through the viewport at the burned forests and ruined towns below. 3 years of Viridian occupation had left deep scars on the land. 5 minutes to drop zone, the pilot announced. Carter checked his gear one last time. The pulse rifle felt strange in his hands, lighter than traditional weapons, but far more powerful. His squad sat silently, each lost in their own thoughts, about the mission ahead. Major Rivera monitored a holographic display showing Viridian patrol patterns around Seattle. Their air defense is concentrated around the downtown core, she said. We'll land here in what used to be Bellevue and approach on foot. The transport touched down silently in a clearing surrounded by half-collapsed buildings. The team disembarked quickly, weapons ready. The transport would return to a safe hiding place and wait for their signal. Chimera Squad, form up, Carter ordered. Rivera, you have point. They moved through the ruins of the suburban city, staying in shadows and using the future soldiers' detection equipment to avoid Viridian patrols. Occasionally, they caught glimpses of the Seattle skyline across the water. Many of the once proud skyscrapers were now twisted metal frames, but one building stood intact, a glass and steel tower surrounded by a shimmering energy field. That's it, Rivera whispered. Their command center. They made their way to the shores of Lake Washington. The bridges that once connected the cities had been destroyed early in the war. Their plan called for an underwater approach using breathing equipment provided by the future soldiers. Water dampens their sensor capabilities, Rivera explained, as they prepared to enter the lake. It's one of their few weaknesses. The cold water enveloped them as they submerged. The breathing masks covered their entire faces, allowing them to communicate through bone conduction speakers. They swam in tight formation, following Rivera's lead. Halfway across, Carter's sensor unit began to flash red. He signaled to the others, and they froze in place. Above them, a Viridian patrol craft moved slowly across the water's surface, its scanning beams probing the depths. For heart-stopping minutes, they remained motionless, floating in the murky water as the craft passed. Overhead, when it finally moved away, they continued their crossing with increased caution. They emerged on the other side in what had once been a waterfront park. The city looked even worse up close. Buildings reduced to rubble, streets cracked and broken, the remains of vehicles scattered everywhere. The air felt strange, charged with an energy that made their skin tingle. They're terraforming, one of the future soldiers whispered. Changing the atmosphere to suit their biology. All the more reason to stop them now, Carter replied. Using the cover of ruined buildings, they made their way toward the command center. As they got closer, they saw more Viridians patrolling the streets. Tall, six-limbed figures moving with eerie grace. Their bluish skin seemed to pulse with internal light, and their four eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. The team paused in the shell of a former office building to observe the command center's defenses. Rivera used a small device to scan the energy field surrounding the tower. Just as we expected, she said. Standard Viridian containment field. Our disruptors should create a temporary opening. Carter divided the team into 3 groups. 2 would create diversions on opposite sides of the building, while the main group, led by Carter and Rivera, would breach the field and enter the tower. Remember, Carter told them, this is primarily an intelligence-gathering mission. We need information on their command structure and future plans. Only engage if necessary. The diversionary teams moved into position. At the agreed signal, they activated sonic devices that mimicked the sound of human weapons fire. Viridian guards immediately responded, moving toward the sources of the sounds. Carter's team approached the energy field. Rivera placed 3 small devices against the invisible barrier. Cover your eyes, she warned. The devices activated with a brilliant flash of light. A section of the energy field flickered and disappeared, creating an opening barely large enough for a person to slip through. Move, Carter ordered. They rushed through the opening one by one. Carter was the last to enter, diving through just as the field re-established itself. Inside, the air felt even stranger, denser, with an odd smell that reminded Carter of ozone and something organic he couldn't identify. The interior of the tower had been completely transformed. Gone were the human-designed offices and hallways, replaced by organic-looking curves and pulsing light pathways. The walls themselves seemed alive, changing color subtly as they moved past. Their architecture is partially biological, Rivera explained quietly. The building is like a living organism. They moved cautiously through the alien environment, following the scanner that Rivera had programmed with the layout of a typical Viridian Command Center. They encountered few guards. Most had been drawn outside by the diversions. They reached a large chamber filled with holographic displays showing Earth from various angles. Viridian text scrolled across the images, incomprehensible to human eyes. Central Command, Rivera whispered. The Supreme Commander should be nearby. Carter positioned his team to secure the room, while Rivera connected a small device to one of the alien consoles. This will copy their data systems, she explained. Dr. Bennett can translate it later. A sound from an adjacent chamber caught their attention, a strange rhythmic humming unlike anything they had heard before. Rivera's eyes widened in recognition. That's a Viridian communication frequency, she whispered. High level. The Supreme Commander must be. The floor beneath them suddenly shifted, becoming transparent. They could see Viridians gathering below, looking up at them with all four eyes. It's a trap, Carter realized. They knew we were coming. Alarms blared throughout the building. The entrances to the room sealed shut, walls flowing together like liquid. Plan B, Rivera said calmly, pulling a device from her pack. Breach charges. They placed the charges at key points around the room. As Viridian forces began to cut through the sealed entrances, Carter gave the order to detonate. The explosion tore a hole in the outer wall of the tower. Wind rushed into the room as the team secured rappelling lines to the remaining structure. Go, Carter shouted over the noise. Everyone out! One by one, they rappelled down the side of the tower. Energy bolts from Viridian weapons followed them, striking the building around them. As Rivera prepared to descend, the floor beneath her suddenly liquefied, pulling her down. Carter lunged for her hand, barely catching it as she sank into the strange substance. I can't pull free, she gasped, the material hardening around her legs. More Viridians were approaching. Carter tried desperately to pull her free, but the material had become solid again. Go, Rivera said, pressing a data device into his hand. The mission comes first. I'm not leaving you, Carter insisted. Rivera's eyes met his. You have to. This data could win the war. She pushed him toward the opening. Tell them I completed my mission. With Viridian forces closing in, Carter made the hardest decision of his life. He took the data device and rappelled down the tower wall, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he was leaving Rivera behind. The remaining team members regrouped at the extraction point. Their transport arrived minutes later, narrowly escaping pursuing Viridian craft. As they flew back toward the bunker, Carter sat in silence, the data device clutched tightly in his hand. The mission had been a success. They had gathered critical intelligence on the Viridian command structure. But the cost had been high. Too high. Unknown to Carter, in a secure chamber deep within the Viridian tower, Major Alexis Rivera stood before the Viridian Supreme Commander. The alien being was unlike any Viridian she had seen before. Larger, with skin that shifted colors like an octopus. Its four eyes studied her with unnerving intelligence. You are not like the others, it said in perfect English, its voice resonating in her mind rather than her ears. You do not belong in this time. Rivera remained silent, her training preparing her for capture, but not for this level of perception from the enemy. We have much to discuss, human from the future, the Supreme Commander continued. Your arrival has changed things. The mood in the Montana bunker was somber when the team returned. Lieutenant Carter handed the data device to Commander Martinez without a word, his face tight with grief and anger. Major Rivera? Martinez asked, already guessing the answer from Carter's expression. Captured, Carter replied. She sacrificed herself so we could escape with the data. Colonel Wright's face showed no emotion, but her voice was strained. She knew the risks. We all did when we came back. Dr. Bennett worked through the night analyzing the stolen Viridian data. By morning, he had called an emergency meeting with Martinez, Wright, and the senior staff. It's worse than we thought, Bennett said, projecting images onto the main screen. The Viridians aren't just invading Earth. They're dying out as a species. The images showed strange cellular structures breaking down, genetic code unraveling. Their homeworld was destroyed centuries ago, Bennett explained. They've been living on generation ships, but something in their biology is failing. They need Earth's biosphere, specific elements in our atmosphere, soil, and water to survive. So they're not just conquerors, Martinez said. They're desperate. Yes, Bennett nodded. And there's more. They're building something in orbit, a device unlike anything in our historical records. The screen showed plans for a massive orbital platform with energy projectors aimed at Earth's surface. This wasn't in our timeline, Wright said, her voice tense. Our arrival must have accelerated their plans. Carter studied the images. What does it do? It's designed to rapidly terraform the entire planet, Bennett said. It would make Earth's atmosphere perfect for Viridians and lethal to humans. According to these calculations, it could transform the entire planet in less than a week. How long until it's operational? Martinez asked. 3 days. Maybe less. Martinez turned to Wright. Options? We need to destroy it before it activates, Wright replied. That means getting to orbit. With what? Carter asked. We don't have spacecraft capable of reaching it. Dr. Green, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Actually, we might. The Future Soldiers transport ship has limited space capabilities. It wasn't designed for orbital insertion, but Dr. Bennett and I could modify it. Do it, Martinez ordered. Meanwhile, we need a plan to deal with the Viridian forces on the ground. If they're this desperate, they'll do anything to protect that platform. The next 2 days were a blur of activity. Carter threw himself into preparations, trying not to think about Rivera. He helped train the assault team that would provide a ground-based diversion while a smaller team attempted to reach the orbital platform. On the evening before the mission, Stephen Jackson approached Carter in the mess hall. I've been receiving reports from other resistance cells, Jackson said quietly. The Viridians are pulling back from multiple areas, concentrating their forces around key installation points. It's like they're preparing for something big. Terraforming, Carter replied. They're positioning themselves to survive the initial changes to the atmosphere. Jackson nodded. I owe you an apology. I was skeptical about you and the Future Soldiers, but you've given us something we haven't had in years, a fighting chance. In the hangar bay, Dr. Green and Dr. Bennett worked frantically to modify the transport ship. They had stripped it down to essential systems, maximizing its thrust capacity and adding makeshift radiation shielding. It's not pretty, Green admitted, to Wright, but it should get you to the platform. And back? Wright asked. Green hesitated. That depends on how much damage you sustain. The heat shielding for re-entry is improvised. Wright nodded, understanding the implication. This might be a one-way trip. The assault team would consist of Wright, Carter, and 3 Future Soldiers with space combat experience. They would attempt to board the platform, plant explosives at key points, and escape before detonation. As dawn broke on the day of the mission, Martinez addressed the gathered forces. Today we fight not just for our survival, but for our planet. Whatever happens, remember this. We are not alone. Resistance cells worldwide are launching coordinated attacks on Viridian installations. For the first time, humanity fights as one. The modified transport rose from the bunker's hidden launch bay, its engines straining under the increased power output. Carter sat beside Wright in the cockpit, monitoring systems that had been hastily installed overnight. Approaching stratosphere, Wright reported. Prepare for acceleration. The ship shuddered as it pushed through the upper atmosphere. Through the viewport, the blackness of space appeared, and with it, the massive Viridian platform. It hung in low orbit, a twisted metal structure that reminded Carter of a giant spider poised above the Earth. Energy readings are off the charts, one of the Future Soldiers reported. They're preparing to activate. Approach vector locked in, Wright said. Prepare for docking. As they neared the platform, a communication alert sounded. A familiar voice came through the speakers. Colonel Wright, Lieutenant Carter. This is Major Rivera. Carter's heart leaped. Alexis, how? There's no time, Rivera interrupted. The Viridians know you're coming, but there's something you need to know. The Supreme Commander wants to talk. Before they could respond, the communication cut off. In its place, a new voice spoke. The strange, resonant tones of the Viridian Supreme Commander. Humans. Your interference has forced my hand. The terraforming will proceed. But I offer terms. Surrender. And I will allow your species to survive in contained habitats. Resist and none will remain. Wright exchanged glances with Carter. A trap? Maybe, Carter said. But Rivera wouldn't contact us without good reason. Wright made her decision. We continue as planned. But be prepared for anything. They docked at an emergency airlock, cutting through the outer door with plasma torches. Once inside, they moved through the strange, organic corridors of the platform, planting explosives at structural points. They encountered surprisingly little resistance until they reached the central chamber. There, surrounded by Viridian guards, stood the Supreme Commander, and beside it Major Rivera. "Hold fire," Carter ordered. The Supreme Commander stepped forward. Its skin rippled with changing colors as it spoke. "Your Major Rivera has explained much to me, about your journey from the future, about what happens to both our species in your timeline." Rivera looked at Carter, her expression unreadable. "They're dying, all of them. But they don't need to destroy us to survive." "The terraforming device," and the Supreme Commander continued, "can be modified, calibrated to create zones compatible with both our species. Coexistence is possible." Wright's hand tightened on her weapon. "Why should we trust you?" "Because the alternative is mutual destruction," the Supreme Commander replied. "Your explosives will destabilize the platform's power core. The resulting explosion will destroy not only this station, but create an electromagnetic pulse that will devastate both our forces below. Neither species will recover." Carter looked at Rivera. "Is this true?" She nodded slowly. "I've seen their data. Their scientists have developed a new approach. Targeted terraforming that would leave most of Earth unchanged. We could share the planet." For a moment, the chamber was silent. Years of war, millions of deaths. Could it end with compromise rather than victory or defeat? Wright lowered her weapon slightly. "We would need guarantees, withdrawal of forces from human territories, an end to hostilities." "That can be arranged," the Supreme Commander said, "beginning with the deactivation of this platform's primary weapon systems." The Viridian moved to a console, its 6 limbs working in perfect coordination. The hum of energy that had permeated the station began to diminish. "It's actually doing it," one of the future soldiers whispered. Carter watched, hardly daring to hope. Could this really be the end of the war? Not through destruction, but understanding? Rivera moved to his side. "Sometimes changing history means making different choices," she said softly. "In our timeline, this moment never happened. We never learned why they came, never had a chance for peace." As the platform's weapons powered down, Martinez's voice came through their communications. "Orbital team, we're seeing energy fluctuations from the platform. What's happening up there?" Carter took a deep breath. "Commander, you're not going to believe this, but I think we're negotiating a peace treaty." 3 months later, Carter stood on a hillside overlooking what had once been the Montana bunker. Now it was the site of the first joint human-Viridian science facility. Below, humans and aliens worked side by side, studying ways to adapt Earth's ecosystem to support both species without harming either. Rivera joined him, her face now bearing a scar from her captivity, but her eyes bright with purpose. "Strange to think that none of this was supposed to happen," she said. "You changed history," Carter replied. "All of you did." "We all did," she corrected him. "Past and future, working together." In the distance, Colonel Wright and Commander Martinez were meeting with the Viridian Supreme Commander, finalizing details of the coexistence treaty. The war that had nearly destroyed humanity had ended, not with the extinction of either species, but with the beginning of something new. The future soldiers would never return to their timeline. It no longer existed. Instead, they had created a new future, one where humans and Viridians found a way to share the Earth rather than fight over it. As the sun set over the mountains, Carter thought about all they had lost and all they had gained. The darkest hour had passed. The tide had turned, and humanity had not just survived, it had found a new path forward among the stars.